Speakers are too
Well,
loud.
hi, everybody. How are you guys?
Good. How are you? Good.
Good. New semester, I guess. So that's cool.
Yeah, a few people dropped out, but
Wait,
you're still here.
No, we have a guest speaker today at another part of the building, so.
Oh, okay. Nice. So you chose 2857, House Bill 2857, which is, let's see, a bipartisan bill related to the therapeutic responses to commercially sexually exploited youth. And that's up for a hearing tomorrow. Have you guys had a chance to talk about the bill? Or so a couple of options for you. Like, so when I do this job, when I volunteer, I'm going to treat you like you're my client. So I don't generally take actions, for my own benefit. Like everything that I do as a lobbyist is on behalf of my client, and the client dictates what I do on a bill. So there's, for example, I might be tracking a whole bunch of bills for a particular client. On some bills, we'll just monitor them. On others, we'll sign in pro or con during a testimony, but not say anything, depending on the priority or who else is testifying. Or in some bills, I'll have direction to actually testify and present a position. But that's all determined by the client. So in this case, you guys are the client. And so you can tell me how you want me to proceed on this bill in tomorrow's hearing. Either we can sign in pro, and I'll sign in on behalf of your class, or we can do some testimony, but I would need some talking points from you, basically, of, not a lot, but, just a few bullet points that would explain why you think the bill's a good bill. Any thoughts on that?
They have a few questions. They made a list of questions.
Okay, all right.
And they need to ask them. I'm not going to for them.
Sounds good. I'm going to grab my glasses.
Where's Tony?
I know, where's Tony?
That's our question.
We were wondering, is the funding coming out of juvenile centers, or where's the funding coming from?
Let's see. It says. I don't know if it says in the bill.
Okay.
So actually what it said, which is kind of a creative way to get around the issue of whether or not there's money for this bill. So it says in section 5 on page 5 of the bill, it says subject to the availability of amounts appropriated for this specific purpose. So what this means is if they don't have money to do this, they won't do it. So they would create this Office of Homeless Youth Prevention if they found funding. So I'm assuming I would guess they're not going to take funding away from other existing programs, because there's not a lot of funding for these programs in general, but they would have to find new money in order to implement it. And that's sometimes a way that legislators can continue the dialogue on a bill that's important and not have it die right away because of lack of funding. Like maybe they can figure out the funding later on in the session.
Okay.
Other questions?
Would they be put into foster care after the program, or where do the kids go after they're went through the program?
No, I don't really know if it said where they go. That's a good question.
It didn't. I think that's one of the rhetorical questions we have is what happens to a kid that they pick up that, and I believe the commentary was when we said it, when we were talking about it was, and I can't remember which one of the three in the front that said it, but I wouldn't imagine that a kid that ended up in this situation came from a particularly good background in the first place.
Right.
Okay. The fear is, okay, and another question that I wrote up there, what protections are there against recidivism?
Right.
All well and fine that a kid can get drug treatment, mental health evaluations, and get therapy and things like that. But what's what's in place to, I mean, do they go to the foster program? Do they go,
Mhm.
that's kind of what the discussion was.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this area in general is not within my area of expertise. I don't really have any clients that I work on these kinds of issues about, so I don't have a lot of knowledge about these programs that's outside of the words on the bill. All I can do is really look at the words on the bill, but those are really good questions to raise.
What is recidivism?
Recidivism is where a person commits a crime, are arrested for it, they serve time for it, they do what the state tells them to do, and then once they're done, they go back and recommit the crime.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like, in this particular case, and I think this is what Abby was kind of getting at was, what's going to stop the cycle, really.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like trying to prevent it, or
There's things you can do.
they do it like.
Well, or they do it twice or something. It would be like they would go through this process of like getting rehabilitated from their like drugs, stuff like that, and like their mental health, and then they would be placed right back where they got them from, like whatever household that was. And so we were asking about foster care because then they would go through the process and then move. So they wouldn't go through the process and then start where they started.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, but the building is say like where they
Uh-huh.
it doesn't even say that they will get treatment. They get evaluated for treatment. That's kind of like.
Yeah, and that's true about it.
Okay, so since that's a concern, like where they go afterwards, how would we make sure we know where they go? Can we like add something, or does it work?
Well, one thing, I mean, if a legislator was concerned about that, and they could write it into the bill. We could say, following an arrest for underage prostitution and treatment, the child should be evaluated for foster care. I mean, that's one way to deal with it. I don't know whether there's a reason they didn't put that in there. I don't know, but it's a really good question.
We're definitely pro bill.
Yeah,
Like she's gonna say anything pro.
yeah, the class wants to register as pro, wants you to register at the hearing as pro.
Okay, and I can see, part of it, since it's the first hearing, right, it was introduced fairly recently, we'll get a sense based on who testifies, so there'll be a lot of, I would assume there will be advocacy groups there that will testify, and then we'll get a sense for, kind of whether this is ready to go, or like some of you guys have raised some questions that are really good questions. Maybe more needs to be addressed in the bill, and maybe there will be amendments. But a hearing is usually the time when all those issues get vetted. So I will go and take notes, and then I can also send you guys a link so you can watch the hearing on TVW as well.
Thank you.
Do we know the present situation with the law?
Yeah.
What was your question?
Yes, he said, what's the status quo? What's the current situation law? I mean,
No, not this law, but like what this law is trying to fix. Like,
situation.
Like the actual like.
Yeah. They're wondering about the context. And of course, we're not asking you that. I think Dane's asking out loud.
Right.
What, is this, how big the issue is, I think, is really what he's wondering
Yeah.
about.
No, that's a good question. Hopefully we'll find out more tomorrow based on who testifies, and I would imagine there would be somebody representing law enforcement there as well, who would be able to report on those kinds of things, and or child advocacy groups who would kind of have a sense. But yeah, maybe one of the prosecutor's offices hopefully will testify, or the association. So all these groups have like associations that tend to have more information than like one prosecutor in Pierce County. They would know what was going on all across the state. So hopefully we'll see some more information come out during the hearing.
How long will the hearing be around, like, timeline?
Can you say that again?
How long is the hearing gonna last?
It's a 2 hour. So it's a 2 hour hearing, but there's several bills that are up for hearing. Let me look. I can see where this is in the process. Sure. Do you want to pull it up? Look at my phone because I have a really cool app that syncs all of so every bill that I'm tracking, it syncs every activity on that bill to my calendar in my phone, which is
that's cool.
Super handy. So otherwise, there's no way I'd know where I needed to be at any given time.
There's an app for that.
I was just wondering.
There's an app for everything, right?
Yeah.
Apple computer slogan.
So this is we brought up here the bill tomorrow, and if you want to bring up the hearing, then we can see where it is on the hearing calendar. So it should be, I think it's, let's see. It's an early learning, house early learning. Tomorrow morning.
Guys.
That's it. So early learning and human services, and is it 1:30? No, tomorrow, I think. Or was it moved? Oh, that's executive session. So yeah, tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I have it down as, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bills up for hearing tomorrow. And this is scheduled third. It's kind of confusing because they also have several bills that they're going to vote on tomorrow too. So have you guys figured out how to use the legislative website? I don't know.
Yeah. Is that the one we researched?
It was the one you did it originally from, yeah.
Yeah. So you go to that website, you can go to like agendas, or you can look up the bill, and then if you go in the bill's history, they'll say when it's going to be heard, and they'll say everything that's happened on the bill. And then you can click on a link to the committee and see the order that they're going to go in tomorrow. But it's because this is the last week before bills have to get out of committee in the House of Origin. So they're doing a lot of what they call executive session, which is actually voting on the bills and considering amendments and whatnot. So tomorrow, this committee will be a mix of public testimony on 4 bills, and then they'll be voting on bills that they've already heard. And they don't typically hear a bill and vote it out in the same day. So what they like to do is hear a bill, and they'll hear all the various testimony, and then they'll decide, okay, is it ready to go, or is it not ready to go? Or maybe it's not going to go at all. Maybe it's just not a good bill. But most cases, if a bill is going to be amended, it's going to be amended in the committee. It can be amended on the floor, but that's a lot harder because then you have to get basically the buy-off of all of the legislators on the floor. So like in the House, this is a House bill. There are 98 House members. And so if there's a need to amend it, to fix it, to maybe address some of the concerns that you guys raised, hopefully they'll do that in the committee, because then they're dealing with a much smaller population of legislators that they have to convince that it's the right thing to do to amend it. And if they don't, then we can work on it on the floor. But that's just a much bigger undertaking.
I was just wondering if we could like watch the hearing and watch all the testimonies and everything.
Yeah, it's at 8 in the morning. I don't know if that will interrupt your other classes, but if not, what I can do is send you a link, because TVW will film all the hearings, and so I can send you a link and you can go back and watch it.
I'll put it up for the people.
Yeah. In fourth period.
We can watch it in fourth period. Yeah.
Let's get a van. Olympia.
Yeah.
Get your field trip forms all filled out. Get your parents to sign them.
So cool. That'd be fun. We should do that.
Get your friends to make parents.
Wait, like, is that all this series? I feel like we should do that.
Well, I'd like to, yeah. I mean, it's now been like 3 years since we've had any kids actually testify in Olympia for a bill. So,
yeah, imagine if we took a whole class there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this bill, if this survives, there's a chance. So if it survives the House, if it keeps moving, then it would have the opportunity to be heard again over in the Senate, and this would be in a couple weeks. So if you at that point, it might be refined a little bit further, and if you wanted to come down and testify on it, we, work that out. Mr. Knutson thinks it's a good idea if you guys want to do that, if you can get permission. We've done that before, and it's kind of fun, or even if you want to come down and just watch how it works in person. Because the thing is, like, when you're watching it on TV, you're going to see a picture of, I think, don't you guys show the committee members? Yeah, so they show who's talking, but they don't necessarily show what's happening in the room. And when it comes to lobbying, really so much of it is watching who's talking to who. And who's people who aren't up there actually testifying, but you can watch the deals being cut on the side, So if you know who the lobbyists are, you can see conversations happening on the side that where they're trying to work out the issues and see if they can come to agreement on things. And it's kind of fun just to see that happen.
I have another.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
So, what do you think the best information is for you to successfully lobby the bill? Like, what information do you think the best?
Yeah, good question. So I think like the first thing is this seems super obvious, but you can't believe how many people don't do this. But knowing what the words on the page say, so that is so important. Like there's we have underlined words, right, that it's new law, and then we have some sections that are new sections, and it's just so important when talking to a legislator to really understand what the bill says, number one, and then number two, try to better understand the implications or the unintended consequences of what those words might be. And then number three, what's missing? Like you guys mentioned, what's going to happen afterwards? This is an address, so what's missing? But it starts with really thoroughly kind of knowing your bill, and it always amazes me that some people don't read the bills really thoroughly and maybe rely on kind of a general statement. But I think that for me, when I'm dealing with legislators, I want to be credible, right? I want them to believe me, and I want them to believe me next time I go talk to them, because I represent several different clients. So I always make sure I'm accurate. And if I don't know the answer, I say, I don't know. I'll find out. And then if the other side of it too is kind of the human side, right? So every legislator is different. They have different background. They have different interests, and so it's for me knowing who I'm speaking with. If I'm speaking with a person who, is, for example, is in law enforcement about this bill, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm going to speak to them in a different way because they're going to have probably personal understanding of it. Versus if I'm talking to somebody who really has no background in it. And same with, like I work for healthcare clients. If I'm speaking with a legislator who's a dentist, like your legislator, so Representative Michelle Caldier from Port Orchard, she's a dentist by training. So I'm going to talk to her about a healthcare bill. I got to make sure that I'm not triggering something that is unnecessary that comes from her own practice. Or I might want to key into that if it has to do with something that she may have experienced before. So part of it is just kind of like, human nature, just learning knowing who you're talking to, and then learning kind of how to read people.
So the bill says that it wouldn't charge the kids for like the prostitution aspect, but would it still charge them for like drug and other offenses?
Let's see. Yeah, I don't think, it doesn't address it really. That's a really good point, because it's highly likely, right, that there's more than one thing going on, you would think. So yeah, this is primarily related to, and actually going back to the title, well, not really. The title is broad enough, so that's one thing we always kind of look at, is you look at the title of the bill to see what potential subjects could be in the bill. And this is just related to commercially sexually exploited youth. So, and then it talks about the sections of the code that are being amended, but you could potentially address other things that go with this, like drug and alcohol abuse, particularly. Question?
Would this law apply to minors who were forced into child pornography or other sort of crimes?
Huh. That's another good question. I mean, it talks about prostitution, which I guess, you know, I don't know. I'd have to look at the definition of pornography because that's probably different. But that is a good question.
And they're going to, and they have to basically apply.
If there's
to
like a 17-year-old who's like
prosecutor's office,
pimping out other people, would this still go for them, or would it like they would be charged normally?
If they're running their own
Yeah,
child ring.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's look at and see. So it says prostitution is a misdemeanor, and then charged or prosecuted for prostitution. So it's kind of broad. So if a person under 18 is shall not be charged or prosecuted for a prostitution offense. So I would think, but I don't know for sure, that pimping out other children would also be a prostitution offense. You're probably onto something there. They would probably be included.
Yeah, probably.
But like,
Like, so they would get off like scotch-free.
I don't think scot-free, but
Okay.
but I think they would be put into a type of therapy. You know, I mean, if a child prostitute is put into therapy, the assumption would be that kid would be, you know, hey, you don't have to do this and stuff like that. I would think the same would go true for a child. You know, it isn't okay to sexually exploit another person. You know.
Who knew?
Yeah, I know, but I wish I could say I didn't have experience with it, but yeah, I actually had a kid that did that. So,
Wow.
well, I'm going to tell you. So, yeah. So, other questions? There's no other questions. Nothing else has come up.
You want to know more about that?
we got some questions for you now, Mr. Knudsen.
Well, but I mean,
You guys have any general questions about Olympia, lobbying? Yeah.
bill goes to the Senate if it gets out of the House. Here's a question that they're going to wonder about. Of course, this bill might, in this executive session you're talking about, it looks like there's 4 bills that are going to be up for vote and then 4 for a hearing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And if this makes it, is the committee going to meet for the hearing after this, or?
Yeah. Let me look at the schedule.
Okay.
Can you bring up the schedule just so we can find it? So go to, I think it's from the general website, legislative website.
Charter class.
So we're bringing it up here. If you go to,
Okay. It's ledge.gov.
Yeah, so I think if you go to legislative home first.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, so let's click on today and then click bring down, well, let's see, I guess it might be easier to look at the committee hearings. So this is, it's early learning, right? Let's click on that. Oh no, that's Senate. We need the House committee. So we can find that by clicking on tomorrow, because we know that it's up tomorrow, right? So scroll all the way up, and then on today, click tomorrow. Yeah. So click tomorrow. Yeah, 1:30. And then, so there's early learning in the House, so go ahead and click on that. And then we can click on, let's see, agendas.
Okay.
And then we can see, so these are their hearings for the week. So they're meeting tomorrow at 8, Wednesday at 1:30, and then looks like Friday at 8. So there's 2 opportunities for them to vote this bill out of committee.
Okay.
Basically Wednesday or Friday. And then it's up. So like Friday as a cutoff. So bills have to move by Friday. unless they have a fiscal impact, unless they're like necessary. It's called NTIB, or necessary to implement the budget. Rules that are necessary to implement the budget will survive beyond and be referred to Ways and Means also, or appropriations. In this case, it's possible. I don't know. So I need to look and see if there's a fiscal note on it, but it's possible it might get referred to appropriations next, since it's going to cost some money, but it's an out. So let's see. Can you look and see if there's a fiscal note? Yeah, just bring up the bill. Yeah. Let's see. 2857.
That means it moves to the.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then go 2857.
And we still need you.
Tell them I have a meeting with a lobbyist. Right now.
You scroll all the way down. So there's no fiscal note yet.
Yeah.
So that's something I'll just keep looking on to see if there is one.
But so it looks like there are two more chances. So it's somewhere on those agendas. It's probably either the Wednesday meeting or it's the Friday meeting.
Yeah, and let me see if it's listed. It might be. If it's listed, it'll show up on my phone.
She has the app.
Let's see. Yeah, so it's actually listed for Wednesday but you never know. So right now, like each chamber does it a little bit differently. The House they typically will automatically list a bill to be voted on, to be exact, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be. It depends on what comes out in the hearing. So that could change, or it could be pushed to Friday if they get too busy and they can't get to it. So I don't necessarily bank on it. Doesn't mean they've already decided in advance that they want to vote the bill out. They wait until they hear testimony.
Okay, so you guys understand that they'll hear it in committee, right? You know what the next step is, right? They vote.
Oh.
Okay, and they vote to either pass it on to the general house for a vote, or they're voting at the national level. It's called pigeonholing. Okay, they just don't vote on it, or they vote, or they give it an unfavorable vote, which means that it could be taken up by the House, but most likely it won't. In other words, it's dead. I think, right?
Yeah, and usually here, like if they don't have enough support in committee, so the Democrats will caucus and the Republicans will caucus on a list of bills that are before the committee. And if they don't have enough votes, usually they just don't bring it up. That's the most common outcome here.
That's a pigeonhole.
Yeah, the pigeonhole. Yeah, exactly. My question?
House vote die. Do we keep meeting with Carrie, or do we pick another one, or like?
Another lobbyist.
There's a lot of stuff we could do.
Lobbyist, just
There's a lot of stuff we could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can find another bill that's going and just follow it.
Okay.
You know,
Didn't we have an alternative one? What about the temple?
we can see what the status is of the free feminine products one too. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll know this week. And you guys are learning something valuable, which is it's really hard to pass bills. So, it always sounds like, oh, legislators are down there just passing bills right and left. And they do pass a lot of bills, but a lot more bills die than pass. So, which is, it's good in the sense that they make sure that they're actually, they're necessary. They're weeding out the stuff that doesn't need to occur. But this is a bipartisan bill, so I kind of have some high hopes for it. We'll see. Question?
So let's say in this next session that's coming up in a few days, it passes, and then it goes on to the House. When does that vote happen?
So, so the next step technically would be it would go to either Appropriations Committee or Rules. If they decide it doesn't need to go to Appropriations, and in Appropriations they're going to talk about how much does this cost. That's what they're going to talk about. And not all bills have to go there, so the committee chair will decide where it goes. There's no fiscal note now, so it might just go to Rules. And the Rules Committee is a weird little committee. It's kind of like a place that weeds out bad bills. They don't actually hear testimony. They have legislators just sitting around a table like you guys are sitting, and they go around in a circle, and each legislator gets to pick, you know, 1 or 2 bills that they want to be moved onto the floor calendar in their chamber. So the Speaker in the House and the President of the Senate in the Senate determine each time there's a rules meeting how many bills a legislator gets to pick, basically. So that's kind of a strange little process. I mean, what I do if I'm trying to get a bill moved is I'll send emails to the legislators, because that's how they like to receive their communication about rules bill polls, and I'll ask them to put it on their list. So that would be the next step for this, would be to get it out of rules.
Yeah, the rules committee is like one of those things they didn't exactly specify in the Constitution really well. But it is necessary. It's absolutely necessary. But you know, like it could be up to a single legislator as to whether something goes or not. Obviously, if it's super important, it's going to go. But if it's something that's questionable, you know, it might not. So.
Yeah. Yep. And then there are some, like if it comes out of committee with bipartisan support, no votes, then sometimes they'll just bypass rules altogether, and they come up with what's called a consent calendar. So, and on it goes a bunch of bills where there's agreement. Last question.
What committee did this bill originate from?
So it's Early Learning Committee. Yeah, Early Learning and Human Services is the name of the committee.
Yeah. So Flash, you register. You want her to register as a pro vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. Did you want her to do anything else, or?
I just want to see the thing.
Oh, she wants. Abby just wants to make sure that she can see the video of it, that she can get the link to it.
Yep. I will send you the link as soon as it's available. It's usually, you know, the same day, and then you guys can watch it. And I'll send you notes on testimony too.
Wait, you said you're gonna post it on Schoology, right?
I'll post it on Schoology. Yeah. So, okay.
All
Well,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. You bet. Good job, guys. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.